I realized that there were gaps in the way that women were treated. And so 4 girls were like, hey, let's go out to dinner. And whenever 4 ladies say that to a physical therapist, you kind of know there was probably something going on, right? So one was leaking urine, one was having pain with intercourse, one had a hernia behind her C-section, and the other one had depression and difficulty losing weight. And so after walking the journey with these 4 women, one at a time, one-on-one for 15 weeks each, I realized that there were gaps in the way that we were cared for. So I started a program called Rediscover Your Music, and that was my entry into women's health. And music is an acronym for muscle flexibility, urinary continence, so making sure you don't leak, sexual fulfillment, internal confidence, and core stability. And over the course of working with those sweet ladies, I realized that women who had C-section deliveries had a harder time recovering than women who had vaginal delivery. So off I go to learn more about what was I missing and how could I support these women better. Took this course, ended up doing 60 scars in 32 days, releasing scars and realizing how scar tissue was impacting the body's ability, the top of the body's ability to communicate with the bottom. And so we have 3 nerves that have to pass through where the scar is. And so if they can't get to your bladder, can't get to your pelvic floor, that's how you can have those issues, even if you have a cesarean delivery. Because when you look online, sometimes people will be like, oh, you got to save your vagina. And it's like, no, we've just created a roadblock to the vagina. And so it's okay, because we can release that, right? I know, so this is, I know.
You feel like, I need to be up here with you.
Is it okay? Listen, and so after my daughter is when Operation This was born, when we started using smart devices to monitor women's data, because I realized that, yeah, you can do a lot from the outside of a woman's body, but there is so much that goes on inside that if we just tracked it, we could have better outcomes. And so my story is that my sweet daughter was born, and my midwife, she detected my preeclampsia before I delivered. And my blood pressure at that time was 128/78. And so a lot of people who think about preeclampsia, they think about the blood pressure being a lot higher. But what she thought about was that my baseline was 100/60. And so if I deviated too far from what was normal for me, her immediate response was to investigate. And that's what it should be in the healthcare field, right? We're not looking at standards and comparing women to them. We're not treating them based on protocol. We have enough technology now that we can see how a woman is doing and compare her to herself. And so that's what she did for me. That's how she caught the preeclampsia. I was still able to have my baby at home, had both of my sweet babies at home. But what happened after delivery was she said, Catherine, you need to really, you're going to have to rest, be on bed rest. And so, y'all, I said I'm a physical therapist, right? So one thing that we're not doing is bed rest, okay? Not getting the blood clots, not having respiratory complications. So I did slow down, though, because normally I wake up at 5 in the morning, go to bed at midnight, make breakfast, lunch, and dinner, go out, take my kids to the park. And so I was like, okay, what she probably means is I need to slow down a little bit. But what she meant was, you need to stay in the bed unless you have to use the bathroom, okay? And so I learned the hard way that within 2 weeks, my blood pressure was through the roof. I was in and out of the emergency room. Lucky for me, there were things that I knew I wanted. I wanted my children with me, so my husband brought them, and they waited outside because of COVID, so they couldn't come in, but I could still breastfeed, run back in, get what I needed to get done. And a miracle happened about a month after my delivery. A PT sent me a watch, and she said, hey, we're trying to see if we can use wearables to detect COVID. Do you mind wearing the device? And I said, no, I don't mind at all. So I wore the device, and when I tell you, after my first meal, I was like, this is a game changer. I eat pretty healthy, right? I was eating cucumbers, tomatoes, and boiled eggs, and my watch starts going off saying that I'm stressed. I went to walk 1/10 of a mile, and my watch started going off. My blood pressure was high. My heart rate was high. And as a PT, you tell people, well, walk 20 minutes a day. It's good for you. It's good for the baby. You need vitamin D. It's good for your mental health. It would have killed me. And so I was so happy that I had this watch because it was able to guide me to where I needed to be. And so just for context, you all, my midwife was a white lady who delivered my first child. And she is the one who caught my preeclampsia. The OB that took over my care was an older white gentleman, and he had been an OB for a very long time. And he looked at me and he said, you are black. You lived most of your life in the South. You probably had high blood pressure before you got pregnant. Your kidneys are not going to heal. You'll be on high blood pressure medicine the rest of your life. And if I'm wrong, on the off chance that I'm wrong, your body is not fit for having another child. And so you think about bias, you think about prejudice, you think about people's past experiences and how they can bring it to your lived experience. And what I realized in that moment was that he was not on my team. okay? I needed him to take my labs because I needed the numbers. I'm a numbers girl, but I needed to recruit other people. So I recruited a dietitian, a physical therapist to watch over my numbers, a pharmacist, an MD who was trained in obstetrics and gynecology but walked away from it because of how the atmosphere was. And I healed my kidneys healed in 9 months. I was off my blood pressure medication in 2 weeks. And after that, I said, okay, women need to have this. And so I wrote a grant. And thanks to people like, I know Mr. Clark is in the back, he's with the Spalding Collaborative, and they have paid for women to have access to these devices in rural areas. Because I was a PT in the city, like I had access to everything I needed. I could go to the doctor and not have a problem. But there are women who cannot, and organizations like his have paid so that we could have these devices in different areas. And so that's what I'm going to talk with you about today. How can we use the devices that we have access to? It's not always smartwatches, right? We have blood pressure cuffs, we have heart rate monitors, we have pulse oximeters. I brought a couple of things because we're gonna work together a little bit so that this concept can come to life of how easy it really is to track people's vital signs so that they can advocate for themselves. One thing I realized about data is that it makes you aware, it makes you take action. When it's combined or connected to a healthcare provider, it holds you accountable, and then in the case that you need to, it helps you advocate for yourself. And so that is why data is so important. When we make data-driven decisions, not when we compare people to the research, but when we let people research themselves, then we're going to be in a better position as a society, okay? And so I want to get started by doing an activity, and I'm super excited about it. I hope that you all are as well. Who has a smartwatch? Almost everybody. Okay. Can you tell me what your heart rate is right now? I've been sitting for a few minutes. I want y'all to call the numbers out. What's your heart rate? 73. 73. Mine is 96. 88, 85, 74, 95. Who else? 74. Any other heart rates?
Can I tell you I have a smartwatch and I don't even know how to check it? I was like,
So
listen, I paid like $600 for this thing. I just think it's cute to navigate.
So we have learned today that you can use your watch for, okay? So the beautiful thing is that of all the numbers that you heard, none of them were the same. What did you say?
They were different.
They were all different. And so research says 60 to 100 is normal. So someone might look at my 96 resting and be like, oh, that's normal. You don't know what my baseline is, right? Y'all have been sitting for a minute. So now you know what your resting is, right? We're all kind of excited right now, but this is, relative resting heart rate. And so now you know that. But what we learned is that everybody is different. And that was just in this small, room, okay? All right, so now what I want you all to do
It's 82.
It's 82. Hey, you didn't know it before, but you know it
You
now.
gotta say show other.
Okay, y'all. So I want you all to do me a favor, and I want everybody to stand up. Every single person in this space, I want you to stand up. And I want everybody to start running in place from me, okay? So let's go. Run. And listen, if you want to run around the room, you can do that too. But I want you to run. I want you to keep running. I want you to answer some questions for me, okay? Now, how many of you like running?
I don't.
Don't like running? Some of you do, okay? How many of you got a good night of sleep last night?
Nope.
Good night? No. How many had a little bit of alcohol? They had an open bar. They had a little bit of alcohol, okay? Had a little bit of that. How many of you are wearing heels like me? Wearing heels, okay. Tennis shoes? Anybody wearing tennis shoes? Okay, good. Okay, I want everybody to stop. And here's what I want you to think about. If I had told you when you come to my session today, you're going to be running. You might have worn tennis shoes. You might have drank more water.
Or not.
You might have not come on. But y'all showed up. And here's what I want you to know. 50% of women show up to pregnancy unplanned. But I want to tell you, and here's the thing, 100% of you participated, and I'm so grateful for that, because when they show up unplanned, that doesn't mean that they have to show up unprepared. Right? We know what happens during childbirth and delivery. We know the tax that's put on our bodies after we deliver our babies or when we get pregnant. So we can just tell them, That way they'll be prepared. It was unfair of me to ask y'all to stand up, and you so willingly did it. And then you had to run in place. But y'all, please, have a seat for me now. I appreciate your participation. And the reason that I ask those other questions is because a lot of women are in different situations. Some live in safe environments, some do not. Some have family support, and some do not. Some have access to good food. Some have kids. Some don't have kids at all. Everybody shows up to pregnancy differently. And yet they endure because they have to. And so we might as well make the road a little bit easier for them, right? I see my friend back there who does community baby showers. And it's so nice because over the past couple of weeks, we've had some moms in Spalding County who have never had baby showers, who live in places where like a child was shot in her sleep in the apartment next to where she lives. And so if you live there, you can imagine what is her pregnancy going to look like, right? And how is she going to go out and walk her children? Like take them to the park? Probably not. 1 bedroom, 3 kids. But when she left the baby shower, she said, I think I'm going to make it. Right? I think I'm going to make it. And we just have to make sure that they make it. And so I look at those external things. I look at furniture that she didn't have. That we got connected in some way. The pastor was like, no, I'll pick up the furniture for her. Someone was giving it away free, but she didn't have the transportation. He went and picked it up, brought it to her house, put it up the stairs. I was like, oh Lord, she lives on the 2nd floor too. Took it up the stairs and brought her a loaf. It's like the things that we can do. And the beautiful thing is that I'm on the other side watching the data, watching the stress go down, watching the heart rate go down, listening to them and knowing that they're on a better journey because the community came around, wrapped their arms around them and created a better experience. And so we talk about, I meant to ask you all to check your heart rate after a minute because it was easy, right? You checked your heart rate at the beginning, you did some activity. If you were to check it at the end, what we would expect is that your heart rate would be at least, if we had checked it while you were running, and then 1 minute later, that it would have dropped by 18 to 20 points. And so if we notice as therapists that a woman is active and her heart rate doesn't do that bounce back, that's a problem, right? Like we're able to use the data to say, okay, something is not quite right, okay? So, with Operation MISS, I told you all we created the program to monitor women. MISS is an acronym for monitor. The I is intervene, the S means survive, and the T means thrive. And the 3 things that we focus on is reducing preventable complications, preparing women for the physiological changes that will take place in their bodies during pregnancy and following delivery, and then we teach them to use smart devices if they have access to them to have a safer outcome. But if not, this is a pulse oximeter. This costs $20. You get it from Walmart. It monitors your oxygen and it monitors your heart rate. And so if she doesn't have that, then as soon as she wakes up in the morning, she just opens this up, puts it on, turns it on, records it, and then she's able to see what her resting heart rate is. And so if she wakes up one day and it's abnormally high, then she would reach out to us and say, hey, I noticed this morning my heart rate was 118 while I was resting. That means something, right? That can mean infection. That can mean that she's just getting sick. Maybe she's getting COVID. It could mean a hemorrhage if she's post-delivery and she's at home by herself. Those are signs, and she doesn't have to be the one to know the answer. She doesn't have to know what it is. She just has to know when to reach out, and that's what we're teaching people. Use devices that don't cost too much, and sometimes are free. Thanks to Healthy Mothers, Healthy Babies, blood pressure cuffs are free to every woman, right? We order it, they send it. And these women get not just those, but compression stockings. They get thermometers, because thermometers help to detect infection too, right? The top 3 causes. If we're looking at heart problems, bleeding too much following delivery, and infection, all of those can be taught with a thermometer, pulse oximeter, and if you're using a smart device with a smart device. And so we shouldn't be home missing that stuff, right? 89% of issues are missed. That's because women are with themselves 100% of the time, but they're not given the tools that they need to thrive. And so that's what this is about, giving women the tools that they need so that they can thrive, and their family members so that they know how to support. And so we are going to talk about 3 ways women can prepare for what's going to change. We already talked about the devices that we could use, and then we're also going to, this is a little bigger. If y'all are missing something, I'll let you know. Evaluate some of the recommendations that are commonly given, and let's see if they actually should be applied to every population. And so we'll be able to decide that together, okay? And so we talked about a couple of the problems. This picture, though, is what I really want you all to focus on. This is a family whose mom passed away 4 days after delivery, and it was from a heart-related complication dealing with her delivery. And she was home by herself with these kids. And I just thought about, man, what if she was wearing a device, right? Could we have caught it? And the answer is that we could have. The next slide, I'm going to show you how we catch things like this. But this shouldn't happen as often as it does. And then the other part that I want to point out are the 50,000 near misses. So not everybody dies, right? I didn't die. I had preeclampsia. There are some other people who had a pregnancy-related complication. Anything in here? Yeah, and you're all here. Praise God, you are all here. That is not everybody's testimony. I did not expect that many hands to go up. But I am so grateful that y'all are here. The fact of the matter, though, is that if you had preeclampsia like me, 2 years down the road, your labs may not be the same. 10 years down the road, you're at risk for having kidney failure. So if women don't know that, and they continue to eat the way they were, they continue, and the thing is, I was eating well, not realizing that protein is hard on the kidney. Meat-based protein is hard on the kidney. And so if I keep eating meat-based protein for the next 10 years, I shouldn't be surprised if I run into kidney failure, but I should be given that information, right? The other thing is that if you exercise and you get your heart into the cardiac zone, that can actually injure your kidneys. So if you already have injured kidneys and now you're running for 30 minutes, that might not be the best exercise. But if you're told by your doctor, hey, you're a little overweight, your blood pressure is high, you need to exercise and eat right. I'm thinking fish, chicken, running. Like I don't know what's best for me until I look at what's best for me, right? And so what I have done is now I do get 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. I make sure that I drink half my body weight in ounces in water. I eat protein, meat-based protein twice a week, but no more. And then in terms of the exercise, the reason, I want to make sure that I give the reason so it sticks with you. When we're exercising, the heart diverts blood and oxygen away from the kidneys and gives it to your limbs, right? Because your kidneys don't need it at that point, you're sweating. And if the kidneys, part of their job, right, is to allow you to get rid of urine, get rid of water, you're already getting rid of water with exercise. So that's how I think about it. It's diverting blood flow. And so I don't want it diverted away from my kidneys if I know that I had a kidney problem to begin with. And so those are just some of the changes that I think, we can make. And when I look at my watch, and I do try to run for a long time, like 30 minutes. 30 minutes, I guess, not a long time, but if I run for 30 minutes, my stress is high for the next 4 hours. And so you think about recovery, you should recover faster than that, right? And so if I want to build back up to running 30 minutes, that's fine. But for now, I do my interval training. So I do 3 minutes of running, then I do my weightlifting, I do my squats, and then I go back to the running. And so that's what I have found works for me. But if someone has had preeclampsia and they're not given this advice, then we can't be surprised why the number one killer of women in the U.S. is heart disease, right? So the kidneys, while we think about it as something that makes urine and releases it, it also helps us create blood, right? And it also manages blood pressure. And so when someone's kidneys are injured, you can almost predict that something might happen with their heart, okay? And so we just have to keep those things in mind. So here is fluid overload that was caught before it turned into heart failure. Yes, ma'am.
Question in the slide before, are those protocols based on are they compared to men?
What do you mean?
Or is it just to women? Because there's not been as much research on women's health as far as definitely cardiac as it is for men. Mm-hmm. Even the signs for heart attacks are different, and they didn't know that. Right. They think, oh, women don't have heart attacks. But now they're seeing that our symptoms for heart attacks are different. Right. Is that based on women or
so
the last bullet point?
Oh, that we're compared to standards and treated based on protocol?
Yes.
Oh, no, this is just what's happening. Like normal. So when I went to my provider and when the women that work with us, if a woman's blood pressure is not 140 over 90, they don't want to look at it. It's like, oh, okay, well, it hasn't gotten to 140 over 90 yet, you're okay. If my provider had been like, oh, Catherine, you're at 128 over 78, she waited until I got to 140 over 90, can you imagine? It might have been too late for me, right? And so that's what I mean by comparing the standards. Or even when someone says, 100 resting heart rate, or 99, let's say someone's resting heart rate is 99. even if I mean, it does fall in the realm of normal, but at the end of the day, heart rate increases by 10 to 20 beats per minute during pregnancy. So I don't want my mom starting out at 99 beats per minute because that means that she's going to be resting at 119 beats per minute potentially by the end of her pregnancy. And so as a therapist, of course, if I see that, then I'm like, okay, we need to get on an exercise program pre-pregnancy because we know the heart's going to work 50% harder during pregnancy. And so let's get that resting heart rate down. And we do that with exercise, right? Like you stress the heart and eventually it becomes more efficient. Okay, that's the way the heart works. But yeah, so the standards in childbirth is what I'm talking about in terms of being compared to the standards. So this is our dashboard, or one of our dashboards. We actually have two now. But I'll give you an orientation because we used this a couple of times during the presentation. So this first rectangle is heart rate. So the green is resting heart rate. We expect that it makes like a straight line. Your resting heart rate is not going to change much unless you're sick, unless you have something going on, right? And so you see that there. If you see a spike, that means that this person has exercised or their heart rate is up above 120 for however many minutes you see on the side. So for this person, it was almost 200 minutes, okay? The second rectangle is sleep. So gray is how long they slept. Yellow is sleep quality. And so we want good quality sleep, not just to sleep for a long time. So sometimes people will be like, oh yeah, no, I sleep 10 hours a night. They get on the dashboard and only one of them is quality. That's 10% sleep quality. In order for you to have good birth outcomes, good health outcomes, you want at least 30% of your sleep to be good quality. And so at that point, we intervene and say, okay, well, what can we do? Are you sleeping in the dark? Is your room, cool? Are you making sure to be off the screens and not having stressful conversations, at the end of the night? Are you making sure not to eat too soon before you go to bed? Just things so that we can then, once they make the change, then go back and look at their data and say, okay, did it work? Because a lot of times people will give you that same list that I just said, or more or less. And you're trying all of these things and you don't actually know if it's working, but y'all have smart devices. If you go for a week and you sleep with a mask, girl, when you talked to me about that yesterday, I was like, I wish I could have seen her data before and after, okay? So she's sleeping with a mask now, her body knows it's ready to go to bed. You can see a difference. And that's what allows change to continue.
We're talking about eye mask.
Yeah, keep it dark, right? And then even at night, when we get up, if we have to get up and use the bathroom at night, keep the lights really low so that your brain doesn't think you're ready to get back up. That messes with your sleep quality. And in terms of birth outcomes, we need moms to have some good sleep quality because their hormones are regulated while they sleep. And so if we need oxytocin to get to a certain level before labor is kicked off, a lot of times women are like, I want to go in labor. They're doing all this stuff to go in labor. I'm like, go to sleep. Go to sleep, okay? Just let your body do what it's supposed to do, but it has to be set up for success. If we put water in a gas tank, we cannot expect that the car is going to run. And that's what I love about this. Women are able to look and be like, okay, I believe that my body was designed to give birth. How do I set it up so that it does it the way it was created? And then if they see it and they ignore it, at least they have that it's an informed decision. That's what it's all about. And with Operation Miss, you don't ignore it. They call me the Scarface of the Miss Mafia. And so if something's going on with your data and you're not changing your behavior, you might as well take that watch off, okay? We are making changes that are best for us, right? So we can have good outcomes. Okay, so the third row is stress. And this is based on, so you know how like when we think about heart rate, it's like beat to beat. Well, heart rate variability is what happens between the beats. How well can you adjust to the things that are going on in your life, externally, internally? And so this is able to see how's your diet, exercise, social interactions, sleep hygiene, stress, work environment, travel. How is all of that impacting your body? That's this line. And then this one, I love it. It's the gas tank for the body. And so if you wake up and you're on an E like you're down here, you need to just call in work and be like, okay, can I work remote today? Okay, so that's the E. If you wake up and you're at 100, that's a full tank of gas. And so you can run the kids to and from daycare, you can do whatever you want to do. But that's the, wait, what you say?
I said I stay on E.
You said, and sometimes we do, right? And we shouldn't though. We shouldn't. Because over time, I'm happy that you said that. Because the thing about heart rate variability, stress, is that when it's low, so low heart rate variability is not good. You want to be able to move with whatever is going on. If you're not though, then over time, you can have higher blood pressure, you can have risk for diabetes because sugar is staying in your bloodstream longer, your body thinks you need access to it, you gotta run, right? This is fight or flight system on high all the time, and we don't want that. But when we're running on E, the body is in survival mode, right? And so we got to get out of running on E. And so this is what our dashboard looks like. And so this is a sweet mom who gave birth on the 5th. So on the 5th, her stress is high, and we're not concerned about that, right? You expect stress to be high when you are having a vaginal delivery. And so stress is a little high, but what we do expect is a reversal of that after the baby is born. So after the baby was born, look what happened. Her stress went up, okay? And then you notice that most of her pregnancy, we kind of cut it off, but most of her pregnancy, she was about between 80 and 100. She'd wake up, her body battery was very well charged. And so the day after delivery, she's at a 5. That is not normal. So we went ahead, reached out to her. We were like, hey, how you feeling over there? I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good. My baby, the delivery was awesome, right? This is her. And I said, you know, you really need to talk to the hospital staff. Just see if they can check on some things before you go home. Your data is not looking like we would expect it to look after you deliver. And she was like, no. I want to go home, ready to go home. I know, everybody's ready to go home. But you don't want to have to go back, right? And so she talked to the hospital staff, and they were like, no, you're looking real good. You just need to go home. So, of course, that was the green light she needed. She was like, I'm going home. They said I'm good. I said, okay, so what did they check? And she was like, I mean, they didn't check anything. I said, well, at least get them to check your hemoglobin. You know, that maybe you might have lost a little bit more blood than they thought. You did have a really fast delivery. They checked her hemoglobin, and y'all listen, she went from a 12 to an 8. Okay? 12 to an 8. And they were like, oh, you're still above 6. You can go home. So this is what happened. And so she felt good at 8. They felt good sending her home at 8. I was like, listen, if you go home and your data does not reverse in 2 days, you got to go back. So y'all are all making this educated, informed decision, but you're going to have to go back. So after 2 days, you can see, so her stress was still up. Her body battery still hadn't charged. And so I called her, I was like, you need to go in. She was like, Heather, I'm not going. I said, well, put your husband on the phone for me. You and I are going to have a conversation. And I told him, I said, listen, your wife is going to hate you. I know, because we interview every mom, every single mom, for at least an hour. This is my job. Now, after I do the hour and I determine that this is a good fit, learn everything about their pregnancy, make sure they're going to sync their watch every day, they promise they're going to sleep in it, do all the things, then it's like I carry all of that information going forward. So the one thing she told me when we first got started was that she hated the hospital. And so for me, so the one thing I didn't want to ask her to do is go back to the hospital. And so I told her, I said, she's not going to like you, but unless you want to raise those kids by yourself, you're going to have to take her to the hospital. She goes, no, you did not, Catherine. You're going to tell me. You know, and the thing is, though, she had a second trimester loss her first time. So that's why she was on Operation This. She didn't want the same thing to happen again. And I said, you don't want it to happen again, and you have the data this time, right? She went to the med stop. She did not go to the hospital. She went to the med stop. Med stop did EKG. They were like immediate transfer to the hospital. They did an echo, did a BNP. Her numbers were trending very badly. And the cardiologist was consulted. He put her on some medication. She was out of the hospital in 6 hours. I was like, girl, yes, like with better data, better, like her heart rate was fine. He told her, you had 3 weeks. I'd have given you 3 weeks at home with your heart rate the way that it was, right? And so I think so a lot of people like they like the data. I like data, but it really is about the relationships. If I had been like, oh, okay, you don't want to go, that's your business. Like, she could have died, right? And so it's about the data, but it's about the sisterhood too, right? But you'll notice, so she went, data gets better, you see she starts to charge again, but then a couple of days later, things look awry again, right? Do y'all see that? And so we reached out again, because why? You're not exercising for 200 minutes a couple of days after delivery, but her heart rate was up for almost 200 minutes. So we reached back out, asked her to call her provider, because I didn't know what was going on. A lot of times we don't know what's going on, we just know it's not right, okay? And so she called, the only symptom that because she didn't have any symptoms of a UTI, but that's what it was. It was a UTI. They put her on antibiotics. They took her in right away, because I think after the first care, they were just like, come on in, right? But to the regular OB office. They checked her, she had a UTI. They gave her antibiotics, and with antibiotics, what we noticed is the stress is higher, right? It's taking out good and bad bacteria. So we're not too surprised by the higher stress level at that point. But then you notice from here it's smooth sailing, right? Her stress is down. You don't see any more yellow vertical lines up here. You see stress is like lower than it probably was during pregnancy. And then you have the good charge. And so this is how we catch stuff, right? And the cool thing is, once women get to the point where something like this happens, then they're messaging you like, don't even talk to me. I'm going on vacation this week. My stress is going to be high. I'm drinking alcohol. Like, they're telling us this is what you're going to see. And we love that. All we're looking for at that point is their return to baseline, right? And so this is how we use the data. And so the solution, we talked through a lot of this, but it's to put the tools in the hands of women, right? We're only seen 15 times between the day that we find out we're pregnant and the year following delivery. 15 times, right? And so unless we're collaborative, like my friend over here, where there are PTs coming in, like everybody's being brought onto the team, doulas, it's like they get more touch points, but they're still not seen every day. But they're with themselves every day. And so we can just empower them. Oh, this is a mom. She's like, get the watch. I love her so much. She was taking naps at work. Her boss was so good. He would ask her about her body battery every day. And they set up a pallet. One day she was supposed to be going to, she's an engineer, civil engineer, I think. Anyway, she goes out and like builds bridges and stuff like that. And so draws up the plans. And she was out on a site visit. And a guy was there and was like, you need to go back. The boss told me your body battery wasn't good. She went back to the office, and they had set up a bed in her office so that on the days when her body battery was low, she could take a nap over her lunch break and not have to go in. Like, it makes me so happy. So, yeah, she had a great pregnancy in a supportive community, right? And so to date, we've monitored 27 women preconception or like just for health, general health, because it's smart devices for smoother pregnancies. Smoother cycles, safer pregnancies, better health. And so those are the three categories. 73 pregnancies, 49 during the postpartum period. And so sometimes people are referred to us after the delivery. So someone's had postpartum hemorrhage, and they're like, oh, can you help her navigate this? Or they're NICU, back and forth to the NICU. Miss Pat, she's somewhere else. I think she hopped in here, hopped out. She refers people to me post-delivery if things aren't really going well. And so we're kind of able to help people use their data so that they can make better decisions than I made, right, following my delivery. And we do now more than a period parties because we feel like, oh, okay, well, if women show up to reproductive years educated, then how many fewer problems would we have, right? And so we started doing these more than period parties last year, again with a grant from Healthy Mothers, Healthy Babies. We're continuing to do some in Spalding because of the Spalding Collaborative. But we've done a lot of parties across the nation. We've been to DC a few times, and Virginia. We'll be in Tennessee soon. We have 4 more set up for Georgia this year, and then we have 160 attendees. But between office visits, we've been able to catch issues 25 times, whether it was anemia, infection, preeclampsia. We caught that super early, where the mom went on to carry for 7 more weeks and delivered a completely healthy baby. And she just modified things so that she didn't have stress. And I feel like if we can do that, then at least we feel empowered. Even if things don't go the way that we want them to go, we know that we did everything that we could so that we could. The other thing is that's not up here is that on 45 different occasions, we have helped women avoid unnecessary intervention, meaning unnecessary C-sections, unnecessary infections, things that, they were called, hey, it's 39 weeks, time for you to come on in and meet your baby. I know your body's tired, and they're able to take their data and say, you know what, my body's actually not tired. Here are my monthly summaries, my vital signs. I think I'm doing good. Is it okay if I stay pregnant? And the doctor's like, okay, 41 and a half weeks, baby comes vaginally, no problem. But can you imagine? You start a process at 39 weeks that wasn't actually able to mature until 41 and a half weeks. That's a big jump. Now, if she had tried it at 40 weeks, and then she was going to 40 and a half, then that's, it seems more doable. And so, but we don't want to gamble because we don't know. So why don't we just keep going, making healthy decisions as long as we possibly can, and let our bodies do what it was designed to do, right? But no low birth weight babies, no premature deliveries. I know! You're so sweet. Oh my gosh. But that's what we want, right? To continue to get women in these situations. All right. One thing that's not up here as well is our C-section rate. And so I know. So of the women of the 73, 3 of them have had C-sections. And thank you. And they chose once they noticed something was off in their day. They made a collaborative decision with their provider. So they didn't feel like they were taken advantage of, like this happened to me, it was an emergency. It was so amazing, right? And so now 4 women did come to us who knew they were going to have C-sections, and they asked us to monitor. And so we do that too. So we've had 4 women who wanted to have a C-section. They just wanted to make sure that they were safe, and they came to us as well. So, yeah. All right. So here are some other things that we've been able to do, help women get off of blood pressure meds. You can read through that, but the thing that I think, the story that I want to tell you, so manage blood pressure. We had a mom, and she went into her doctor's appointment. Her blood pressure was through the roof. And now I'm gonna tell y'all, we make deals with our moms. We make demands of our moms. And at the beginning of her pregnancy, we knew that her going to Carrabba's made her blood pressure go up. So we decided that no matter where else you go, you're not going to Carrabba's because this is a mess. Right? So the day of her appointment, I'm telling y'all, she's at like 39 weeks. She had gone the whole pregnancy without Carrabba's. The day of her appointment, she goes to Carrabba's, goes to the appointment. Blood pressure through the roof. The doctor's like, you're already at 39 weeks. We need to go ahead. We need to schedule this C-section, right? Blood pressure was bad. So she calls me crying. Oh my God, Catherine, what am I going to do? I was like, you're going to drown yourself in water. You're going to get a good night of sleep. You're going to eat. You're going to send your new blood pressures to your doctor in the morning so that they don't have to make this decision. A lot of doctors don't want to do, like, we encounter providers who do want to do scheduled C-sections, do want to do inductions. There are a lot of doctors who would prefer not to do it, but if they're given the data, they have to make the decision that's best for you and for your baby. So I'm just like, don't give them that kind of data. Don't go back to Carrabba's. She delivered her baby 3 weeks later, vaginal delivery. She was fine, but she did have to communicate with him, right? Yeah, the baby's already 39 weeks. They're like, it's better out than in, right? That's what their thought is at that point. But that was a snapshot in time. That was not her reality. And so we have to start giving doctors the information that they need so that they can, too, make more informed decisions, right? The next thing, this was postpartum hemorrhage. The two things I want to point out here, this mom, it was so wonderful. So she was at a hospital. She had a midwife. She had like a really beautiful delivery. But then tugging on the placenta, or the umbilical cord happened. Placenta remains in the body. She ends up hemorrhaging, and she was not given a transfusion. Okay, so the decision was made not to give her a blood transfusion. And so, we talked to her about energy conservation, like things that she needed to do, making sure she was watching her data, and she goes home, and of course, newborn baby visits are coming up, right? Nobody wants to miss their baby's newborn visits. But if you're spiking 125 minutes, as if you're exercising for 125 minutes, this is what the watch is telling her. You can't go. You have to stay home, right? Somebody else has got to take the baby. So husband took off 2 weeks so that he could do the visit. After he had to go back to work, mother-in-law came. And so mom, baby, she had help. And so what you notice is, on day 7, so this is when her mother-in-law decided to come. Husband had decided to come. Wait, no, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, that's not what I meant. I mean, that is what I said. What I meant was, we made the decision to have mother-in-law come because this happened again. And that was that's because she was still doing too much, right? So husband's home, but she's still thinking, I gotta do everything. But y'all, I do have to tell y'all the truth. You know how sometimes people are like, oh, I don't know who I want to have in the room with me, whatever. This watch will tell you. You have people who are like, my mama can't be in the room. My sister can't be in the room. My mother-in-law sure can't be in the room. And they are okay to say it firm, flat, because they know. During pregnancy, our body has a harder time getting out of fight or flight. So it gets over there pretty easily, just like it does before. Harder time getting out of it. You won't want to be in a fight or flight situation trying to bring forth life, okay? And so I'm happy that came up, but that was not the case here. Mother-in-law was cool. But after this, she started charging better, her stress went down, sleep quality improved, and she was able to keep her heart rate from going up as much. But you see, she has yellow still. And that's because when our bodies are operating with less blood, that means that the body has to work harder to deliver oxygen, right? And so when they're able to see this, though, this is what helps them say, okay, I really do need some help, right? She's doing great. So here are some of the other things that I just think is so beautiful. It's a beautiful testimony to how family will kind of step in and help when they realize that something is going on. I'm sorry, y'all, I can't see the time, and I want to make sure. You don't have the time? 2:56. Thank you. Okay, and so here are some of the things that people have been able to do because they do check the data. And it's family members. They're waking up now, checking the app, and there's this one guy on vacation. I love this. He took his wife to Great Wolf Lodge and their son because they were trying to do like a baby moon, but with a 2-year-old. And so they went to Great Wolf Lodge, and he woke up, he checked her watch, and he wrote her a note. And he was like, hey, I'm taking our son to the water park. Your stress is up. You didn't charge too well last night. We'll see you in a couple hours. He brought her breakfast. Yeah. Oh, yeah. He was like, we're not going to try to make the most of this vacation. We need to make sure that you're good. And so the next day she was able to enjoy it. But they really, like, when I tell you he honored his woman's physiology, he was like, what we're going to do is what's best for you and our baby, right? And in their first pregnancy, they had preeclampsia. And so, of course, they have a vested interest in making sure that they can do whatever they can to not have that outcome the second time around. She had a great delivery, but those are some of the other things that families have just been willing to do because they have access to data. So I'm going to ask this question now. We kind of did it, so you all may have different thoughts than if I had put this on at first, but this woman ran a 5-minute and 17-second mile while 9 months pregnant. It says, don't be afraid. So the tagline, here's the thing. Tagline is, don't be afraid to challenge reality. What do y'all think about that?
If that's what she was normally doing before she got pregnant, then fine.
Then you think it's fine, okay.
Well, everybody's reality is different.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And if that's what she chose to do,
Okay.
that's her choice.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other thoughts? At 9 months, 5-minute mile, like she's in the military.
Yeah,
I'm not doing that.
my first thought with my patients is they will read that and say, I need to be doing more.
Yes.
I need to be doing
Yes.
more.
Yes. Go ahead. Do you have a?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Well, I was gonna agree with both you guys. Like, maybe if she's already been running miles her whole entire pregnancy and prior to this, she could have did that at 8 months, 7 months. So it's probably very normal for her. But the tagline is very much gonna throw it off for her. Especially, I like to call our mamas today. They love TikTok and they love to like believe the things. So I'm like. Because I just thought, I said, I don't even run that not pregnant. So if I see this, I'm going to be like, oh, I can just go, no, not at 9 months I cannot because I don't even do that now as a regular person. So,
Right.
Yeah, that's definitely misleading for pregnant people.
So yeah, her reality versus somebody else's reality.
It's not going to be the same, right? And so I love this picture because a lot of people would just cheer her on and be like, go girl, what did you do that? But what I'll tell you is sometimes this is actually what keeps people in the overdrive. So they were fine the whole pregnancy. Then they decide, oh, I'm going to do this. It might have been okay month 1, month 2, month 3. But this is somebody that really just needs to be monitored. So if she's monitoring and she sees that, okay, I'm fine, maybe she is fine, right? But I also think about what's happening with her pelvic floor. What's happening with her joints, right? Like, there's so much more to think about than cardiovascular. And so we do really have to do, though, what's best for us. Right? I'm so happy. Thank y'all for the participation. So here's what we expect to happen during pregnancy. And I just put this up here because I feel like maybe everyone may not know this, and now that we do, we can share it with the moms that we serve. But heart rate increases by 10 to 20 beats per minute. We talked about that. Blood pressure actually is expected to decrease by 5 to 10 millimeters of mercury. And that's why when someone's blood pressure goes up, it can be kind of a red flag for people, right? Because we're expecting that because there are some hormonal changes that actually cause the blood vessel to get bigger. And so a larger blood vessel is going to result in a larger blood vessel diameter should result in a lower blood pressure. And what they found research-wise is that blood pressure doesn't actually return to baseline until about week 40 of pregnancy. And so if we see higher pressures, then that's a reason to just reach out and be like, hey, maybe something could be going on. If we check and make sure they didn't go to Carrabba's, right? Or that they're not dehydrated, because dehydration will drive up your blood pressure. And so there are just certain things that we can do from a lifestyle modification. But if it persists, then it deserves investigation, right? The next thing is that the heart is going to work 45 to 60% harder. That's typically starting at about week 20. And so the whole second half of pregnancy, if we're doing the same thing the second half of pregnancy that we were doing the first half of pregnancy, understand that we're doing it at a disadvantage, right? And so what we like to do is help people modify. So as a physical therapist, that is, not outside of the remote health monitoring, if someone's playing tennis and they're playing they're playing singles during their first trimester, we might have them play doubles during the second trimester, right? And then during the third, maybe they're playing against the wall. It's just them against them. So they can still be active, still be doing what they want to do, but they're taking into account the fact that their heart is already working harder, so we don't want to put something else on top of that, right? The kidneys are going to work 50% harder, and they actually continue to work harder through the second week following delivery, not at 50%, but higher than it did pre-pregnancy. And when I think about this, because later on, I'm jumping ahead, we're at 6 on my slides, I think, but there's a study and it talks about cerebral autoregulation. And so normally the brain and the spinal cord are protected. The blood pressure is not going to increase unless something is really wrong. The blood pressure is not going to decrease unless it's punctured, right? And then you start losing fluid. But the body is protective like that. During the first 2 weeks following delivery, we do not have that protection in the same way that we did prior to delivery or prior to pregnancy. And what the studies show is that in preeclampsia, the protection is almost not even there. And so a person who had a completely normal delivery, completely normal pregnancy, they still have a hard time regulating their blood pressures, which is why if I beg somebody to do anything in terms of maternity leave, I'm like, please don't go back the first day, because our blood pressures are expected to go up. If you stand up right now and you go for a walk, your blood pressure is going to be up higher. You start exercising, your blood pressure is going to get higher. Of course, the exercise then over time will help your blood pressure work more efficiently, so it will get lower. But in the moment, your blood pressure is higher. And so that woman who is a single mom, who has to still take her kids to school, who then drops them off to school, then goes to work, and then she goes and picks them up after school, she's making dinner, bathing them and getting them ready for bed, her blood pressure is up and doesn't have a way to get down during those first 2 weeks, okay? And so we just have to be really protective of that time. I wish we had longer. We're all fighting for longer for moms, but at least 2 weeks, we have to figure out how can we get her help so that she is not hurting herself unknowingly, right? The amount of blood that's available to carry oxygen decreases, so that's why we see that decrease in hemoglobin. So that is a normal part of pregnancy. The problem was the race-based protocol that said we wait until black women get down to 10.2 before intervening, but we intervene when a white woman gets to 11, right? And so that was the problem, but that problem was exposed a couple years ago, so hopefully that is no longer a problem, okay? And then the body's ability to adapt to stress decreases. During delivery,
I have a question, I'm sorry.
Of course, don't be sorry.
So, does the blood volume triple then during pregnancy, or no?
You said, does it triple?
Yeah.
Now, I don't know about triple, but I do know that it's a lot higher. Yeah, so I don't know what percentage I have. 45%. But the interesting thing is that it doesn't increase in the same proportion. Because I understand your question, right?
Mm-hmm.
So red blood cells do not increase as quickly as plasma.
Okay.
And so it's a relative anemia of pregnancy, right?
Okay.
I love your question. So yes, because there are 4 parts to blood. And normally there is white blood cells, red blood cells, plasma, and platelets. And so during pregnancy, all of the volume increases, but not that the red blood cell ratio to plasma is off. And so that's why we have the relative anemia.
And then I heard what you said about the hemoglobin, the 11, the iron. Yeah. So is it not correct that our iron is lower than white women's iron?
Ooh, now, to be honest,
Naturally, and that's why they had that ratio.
So they initially had the ratio because of that.
Mm-hmm.
But with us being the ones that are dying from bleeding too much following delivery, then it really should not have been a protocol in the first place.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Because the same thing with kidney, it's funny, the GFR, they've actually revealed that too, that women, like a GFR is what measures your kidney function. And so they had a white number and then they had a black number. And they did that because what they were realizing was that the GFR for black people was higher. Like, our kidneys were working harder, and they were just like, oh, okay, well, that must be the norm for them, and then for white people, that's their norm. So then we weren't getting transplants, and they were. And so this doctor, she actually fought really hard to get all of this investigated and to get that protocol overturned.
And I'm sure to prove the point that we live in food deserts, we have weathering trauma, so of course our kidneys are working harder, but not because by design, but because of the
survival.
Right. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
Everything's working harder.
Everything.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Thank
I want to take a picture of that.
Go ahead. So the other thing I was going to say, so these are some things that we recommend that people get checked before they get pregnant. So as a PT, if they come to me and they're like, oh, I want to get pregnant, get me in shape, give me some numbers. We want to know how your blood levels are doing because we know you're going to need more of this during pregnancy. In terms of gummies, like I was taking prenatal gummies. I did not know they don't have iron. So for any of you who work with, they don't have iron. I didn't know. That's how I got caught with anemia my 3rd trimester. Wow. Right? Creatinine, GFR for kidney function, resting heart rate, blood pressure, we talked about that. Heart rate recovery is really important. So how fast do you recover after your heart rate has gone up? I'm checking that. hemoglobin A1C, because we know sugar is going to hang around in the bloodstream a little bit longer during pregnancy, right? So they should just know their number. And that way we know that walking, if we walk for 20 minutes a day, it helps to regulate our blood sugar. So we can go ahead and get women on the path of walking and helping themselves out before they get pregnant. And then, of course, looking at things like the glycemic index and seeing, okay, well, what things am I eating that are spiking my blood sugar? Because we're not dietitians, of course, as a PT. I think about bringing everybody on the team. So if someone tries they're looking at the glycemic index, they're walking, they're doing all the things, and they are not seeing a difference, then they need some help before they get pregnant. Some real help, not just coming to physical therapy, right? And then hormone levels. And so we talked about what this is, the pulse oximeter, but resting heart rate gives us insight into sickness and infection. Max heart rate is what we look for hemorrhage, anxiety, response to some medications in pregnancy. And then someone's recovery, of course, is giving us a look into their activity tolerance. In terms of oxygen saturation, things that we've been able to catch when it has dropped is sleep apnea, hemorrhage, and anemia. And it's important to catch sleep apnea, right? Because if you're not getting oxygen, your baby is not getting the amount of oxygen that it needs. And so if someone is tracking, like if y'all track overnight and you notice that you're consistently in the 70s, you could just reach out to your primary care doctor and be like, hey, I'm noticing this. And what they will typically say is, oh, it's a smartwatch, don't worry about it. That's what they'll say. It's just sometimes they just says that you run low. What we have found is that if someone consistently runs in the 70s and they get a sleep test done, they will typically uncover sleep apnea. And what's really neat is that once they get their machine to sleep in, their data turns around. Go ahead.
Given what we just discussed, how most of the patients can have a baseline that's not really accurate because the world has
Yeah,
happened to
right,
us.
yeah.
How do you establish a baseline? Like what my numbers should look like? How are you guys establishing that?
So what we do is we let them just sit on the watch for 2 weeks. And then that becomes their baseline. And so, because most people, when we ask them, what's your blood pressure normally? Oh, I don't know. They check it when I go to the doctor's office. And so they're coming to us with no baseline, okay? Now, I will say, like, if someone is stress-wise, because we don't make any generalizations, but if someone is trying to get pregnant and their stress is consistently in the 40s, we normally would encourage them to get it down to the 20s before they start. Only because if stress is in the 40s, that means that they are spending 40% of their day in fight or flight. That's a lot, right? And we understand, like, there's positive stress, like the things we're eating, we exercise, that stress, and so you're going to have some stress. But if we get it to where you start the day out in your 20s and then you kind of maybe get into the 30s, that's a better setup for pregnancy. In terms of heart rate, what we try to do is just get it as low as possible. So if someone's resting in the 70s, then we're kind of trying to get it to the 60s if we can. Because what we've seen is that 20-point jump is real. And so when women get to like 95 resting, they're tired. Like going into a delivery resting at 95 is tiring. Whereas we see some women, their highest is 72 because they started out pregnancy at 50. And so from what we've seen, we try to get them to what we think is a better number so that they can have better outcomes. Yeah. But we don't look at any two moms and be like, oh, she's here and she's here, because it doesn't mean anything.
Right.
So this, I know I talked with you all about sickness and alcohol. This is what it looks like on the dashboard. So it's for some women who are like, oh, I just drink on like Mondays and I like every other night. I don't drink every night, right? The problem is it takes a little while for alcohol to get out of our systems. And so the cool thing is if someone comes on preconception and they see that, wow, it takes 3 days for my body to recover after alcohol, then I'm just not going to drink alcohol, right? Because that means that if I drink Monday, I'm still recovering when I'm drinking again Wednesday, and I'm still recovering when I drink again Friday. And so they come to that conclusion on their own. It's a pretty beautiful transformation to see. Let me go forward a little bit. In terms of sleep quality, we have to really, what we think about a lot is the impact of discomfort. Some women, they're nervous during their pregnancy, they're in pain, they're up and down using the bathroom, they have restless leg syndrome, they have there's a lot of stuff going on. And so what we're trying to do is how can we get sleep quality to be good? And so that's how we use it on the smart device. The other thing that we've noticed is mental health. There is one lady, and that's what this one is. She was at a stress of 72, had never hit 72. I had never seen 72 on dashboard. I was thinking, oh my gosh, what is going on with her? Body battery was down. She had some elevated heart rate. Reached out to her. Turned out it was the anniversary of her son's death. And so after talking to her, it was the anniversary of her son's death. And so was pregnant with another one. It was just too many emotions, right? So she ended up reaching out to her mental health counselor, who she had been avoiding. Okay, and she called and she gave her some tools. And as you see, like it only took one visit, right, to see a change, to see an improvement. It was beautiful. So we've been able to identify mental health issues as well.
I thought this was gonna be one of my questions at the end, but you're already on the slide.
Okay, I'm gonna skip forward because I've been told I have to.
What factors on your thing is shown? Because I know you put like the things on the side of what can make sleep quality, but
Yeah.
what? So when you see that someone, because you earlier said something like, oh, you slept 10 hours, but it was only 30% quality. But like, what on your thing is showing you that it was only 30% quality? Like,
So there are numbers. So we have an algorithm. It's like y'all are seeing one. There are 9 pages to the
Okay.
dashboard. And so, but like sleep quality here is 1.7 is the number of sleep hours. So you would basically put 1.7 over 7.41, and that's how you come up with the percentage. But the computer does it.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the yellow ratio to gray. And so when I'm looking at it, if it's like down here, normally we only see that when someone's going into labor. So if we see 0 sleep quality and they're like at 40 weeks, and we're like, oh, okay, their body's working overnight, right? It's pretty cool. All right, so let me skip forward to, the other thing that I want to talk about is blood pressure. A lot of times people are like, take your blood pressure at rest, take it at rest. We need to take it when we're moving. Women in the hospital need to take it after they've done stairs. Like, the blood pressure is going to have a hard time recovering, but we need to know what are they going to face when they go home. And so there is a movement across the U.S. Of having PTs and L&D. So we come in following delivery, help them get into and out of bed, help them with energy conservation. Women are dropping babies. I don't know if y'all know that, but they're so fatigued, so tired. So like it happens. And so PT is getting into L&D and really helping in that regard. And part of that is monitoring blood pressure. The last thing I want y'all for us to talk about, I know we talked through a couple of studies, is that Pitocin is recommended at 6 million units per minute by research, and that's when it mimics what the body is doing. At 12 million units per minute, it can negatively affect the heart. What we find is that a lot of people get up to 20 to 30 million units per minute, and then they wonder why they went into heart failure afterwards. We have got to start advocating for ourselves and really using the research to inform decisions. And then this is the last slide. This is a woman, and she did refuse to leave the hospital. She was in the hospital. She tried to get up and use the bathroom. She almost passed out. Blood pressure was low. They were like, oh, we'll give you a catheter. You can just use the, then you don't have to worry about getting up. So she stayed in the bed like that. She asked if they could recheck her hemoglobin. They were like, no, you're fine. If anything, we'll just give you an iron infusion. And I was like, it takes time for iron to be made. Just ask them if they can just recheck and they can make a better, more informed decision. So they gave her the discharge papers, and she was like, Catherine, I just feel like I'm such a fight. I've been fighting for so long. I said, you got to fight a little bit more. And so she did. They rechecked her hemoglobin. It was 5.1. Immediately, they were like, so sorry. We're going to go ahead. Right, of course, cross-match testing, given the transfusion. Went up to 8.8. She felt so much better. She was able to go home safely. And so that's the power of having data. Like if she didn't see her heart rate up for 140s when she was sitting on the edge of the bed, she wouldn't have fought for herself. She went home and thought she was fine. The beautiful thing is that once they were given data and she refused to leave, then we got it checked into. And that's what we have to do. That's what data allows us to do. And so thank y'all for listening. If you have any questions afterwards, no. Thank you. No, it's so sweet. Thank y'all so much. You're welcome. Thank you for coming. Thank you, everybody. Girl, yeah. And
I just said